Hello and welcome to the PFFUI podcast. On this month's episode, President Tony Murray and Vice President Hank Harris discuss the 2025 Indiana legislative session and pieces of legislation the PFFUI is following. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the PFFUI podcast. My name is Eric Schoib, and I'm joined today by President Tony Murray. Hey, Tony, how are things going today?
Well, things are going, Eric. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It is great to see you as well. The 124th Indiana General Assembly kicked off this week in Indianapolis. Nearly 1,250 bills have been filed this session, with more anticipated next week. The PFFUI legislative team has been in the State House halls all week and is engaged with all bills that will affect our members. Tony, can you please explain the process that our legislative team goes through this first week of the legislative session?
Sure. And even leading up to the session, when bills start being filed really right after Christmas, our legislative team is made up of registered lobbyists, myself, Vice President Hank Harris, and our government relations liaison, Mike Whited, who spent, I think, 16 sessions in the halls. So we are our team. We also, as these bills come in, we're reading every bill. Hank is most specifically charged with that responsibility. So Hank's been doing
I've got 1,000 down.
He got 1,000 bills down. So, and what that looks like is we use a bill management system. That as the bill comes in, it gives us a synopsis. We read through the synopsis, then read through the entirety of the bill, and then put a label on it, classify it into whatever direction if we want to track that bill. And then as we track something and we sort of create a real priority like A list, B list, C list of what we want to be engaged with, but we're sorting through all of these, and this process continues right now. But we're already now, we have the process of sorting and reading bills to see what they have to say and if they affect us. If they affect us, we're definitely tracking. But now, in this first week of the General Assembly, we have bills being heard in committee. So what our team does on a day-to-day basis is make sure that we're in attendance at committee. We decide whether or not we're going to testify on a particular bill. We may talk to the bill author, we may talk to the chair of the committee to talk about maybe changes that we suggest be made. And if they're interested, we help with language that would be part of the amendment. And then testify either in opposition or in support of the particular bill. As that bill then advances, if it does move out of committee, then we follow it to the floor. On the floor, when it goes to second reading, the bill has the opportunity to be amended on the floor. And whether or not it's amended, if it gets past second reading, then we wait for it to be called down on third reading to the floor for a full chamber vote. So if it's a House bill, we're looking for the full chamber vote in the House, or if it's a Senate bill, etc. Then at the turn, what we call the turn of the session, the midway point, then every bill that got through that process successfully switches the chambers. So House bill goes to the Senate and the process repeats, and we repeat the process. And then until finally, as the end of the session wraps up, there is this process called conference committee, where the rule of being germane or making changes germane to the bill no longer applies. So we have to be very diligent during that period of time to make sure that the bills that we supported make it through to the finish line and head to the governor's office for a signature, or bills that died could resurface. And those sometimes could be bad for us. So we use that opportunity to be very diligent about maybe supporting our legislative agenda and our priorities.
So our priorities could be one thing this week, and they could change next week due to how they go in committee or how the laws change, correct?
That's right. Or if they get an amendment. And literally one word sometimes can make all the difference. So I really appreciate our team and the, experience that comes from Mike, and, helping us do this and craft, this process. But also, I think it's worth mentioning, and I think Hank, you would agree, that there are relationships that are built in the halls. So we work with there's a lot of different lobbyists in the halls that are lobbying for different issues or different clients. And sometimes our priorities align. Sometimes our priorities don't, and they kind of cross. But we have discussions also, so that with our fellow lobbyists out in the hallway, and stakeholders and other associations just like us, and we're having those conversations. Even outside of the legislative day, which could be short some days, long other days, and go into the night. But our work sort of continues after that gavel falls, and that is part of the process, and having conversation, engaging legislators and, other stakeholders and other lobbyists throughout that, and agency heads too. So we're also talking to agency. Our biggest agency that we deal with is Indiana Department of Homeland Security, but we also deal with health, and other, other agencies that are operated by the state. But I was joking with Hank just a couple of weeks ago. I said, sometimes in this work, we have two parts: the first 8-hour day, and then the second 8-hour day that happens once the gavel falls. And
2 days.
we're still working on it. 2 days in one. So that's the process.
Today, we're going to be talking about a handful of priority bills that could have an impact on our members with President Murray and Vice President Hank Harris. Hank,
good to see you. It's Hank's first session in the halls, so got 6 days under your belt.
Full 6 days.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
nice job, Hank.
Good job on the good job.
So the first bill that we're going to talk about today is Senate Bill 388, which is the pension enhancement. Hank, would you like to share the information on 388?
I'd love to. So Senate Bill 388 is authored by Senator Rogers. It's going after it addresses a goal that we've been working on the past 2 or 4 years with the PFFUI and Convention Action, and that's looking at enhancing our pension benefits. After working with our partners at the FOP, and we've been working all summer with NPERS, we kind of landed on this concept still early on. The current bill language as introduced would increase our 20-year benefit from 52% to 55%. And Part 2 of the bill also increases the accrual from 1% every 6 months to 1.25%. Again, still has a long way to go. It was introduced. We did have a hearing where they only did testimony only. It's currently not scheduled for a vote at this time. And we're still working on what the final product would look like, but that's where it's at right now. We are also working on, obviously, with anything with our pension, we want to make sure that it's funded and that we don't harm our pension. So there is a cost factor to that, and we're working on what those increases would look like at the final package.
Yeah, and I think that we did talk about the Pension Management Oversight Committee meeting that was held earlier last fall in 2024, where we presented this plan in front of the committee. And one of the things that we're always very cognizant and is, top priority is to make sure that anything that's done in the 77 fund is paid for. Now, we are in a bit of a period of time right now where there has been a reduction in the actuarially funded status of the fund, 89.9% right now. But there's a lot of moving pieces that we also are looking at, and also, members of the committee in pensions and labor in the Senate, where this bill is, they're doing their due diligence, as we are, to make sure that the funding status of the 77 fund is not harmed, or at least any enhancements that we do, that there is a pay for. And so we're very keen on these things because it's important. This is one of the most important things to our current members, retired members, and the members that are yet to become involved in the fire and law enforcement in Indiana.
Our next bill is House Bill 1020, which is the COLA and death benefit.
Yeah, so House Bill 1020, it's authored by Representative Haggard. Currently not scheduled for a hearing. It has been filed. Checking daily to see if it's been scheduled for a hearing and where it's at with that. What this bill does is, again, two parts. It's also with part of our pension program is it would increase the max COLA benefit from 3% to 5% for those members that are currently retired on the 77 fund. Currently, depending on CPI, the COLA is capped at 3%. So when we had inflation and CPI was above 3%, our retirees were only receiving up to 3%. This would increase it up to 5%. Part two is also increasing the death benefit. Currently, it's at $12,000, and we're looking to increase that to $15,000. Again, got to look at the funding mechanism of that and what the cost is. Our COLA is pre-funded, so it costs a one-time infusion into that to cover that increase, and we believe the death benefit can be absorbed within the fund currently, so less of a concern on that one. So again, House Bill 1020, it's the COLA and death benefit, part of our pension, currently not scheduled for a hearing, but still working on it.
There is also a companion bill, I guess we would call it, in the Senate, Senate Bill 406, which is authored by Senator Pohl. This only addresses the COLA, and it's reflective of the same language that Hank mentioned, increasing the maximum cost of living adjustment to 5% should it rise to that. So that is also not been scheduled to be heard, but it is in the Senate Pensions and Labor Committee as well. So we're also watching that.
And our next bill is House Bill 1051, Mobile Integrated Healthcare Grants.
Yeah, so mobile integrated healthcare. These are grants that were established back in 2019. They weren't funded until 2023. Right now, this grant program is for EMS agencies that are operated by cities, towns, and townships to apply for a grant, and it is funded now presently in this biennial budget as $500,000 in each year, and doing some prospective looking in the governor's proposed budget, which was just released today. Actually keeps that funding still there. What this bill does is add to cities, towns, and townships. It adds county EMS agencies as being eligible for that. That did clear the House committee this week and is on its way to the House floor for second reading and is subject to amendments.
And next, we have a couple of EMS bills. We have House Bill 1686, which EMS as a essential service. Senate Bill 505, alternate destination.
Yeah, so a couple of these bills we've been working on. The EMS as an essential service, authored by Representative O'Brien, is House Bill 1686. And that has been a priority of the Indiana Fire Chiefs Association, which we've been working with them throughout the summer to add input to this bill for the representatives' consideration. This is assigned to a committee and has not yet been heard. The other piece was a new bill just dropped this week, and that's Senate Bill 505, authored by Senator Deary. And this is a concept of alternate transport destination, which would allow ambulances to transport to other appropriate locations, such as urgent care facilities, mental health facilities, and addiction facilities, as an alternative to the emergency department. So we're keeping an eye on that, and this is something that we have been talking about, has been on our legislative issues conceptually for a couple of years now.
And I think it's important to the legislators as well, just to add on to that. Representative O'Brien, over the past month, I think he had the EMS roundtable where we brought a bunch of legislators and stakeholders to actually look at EMS across the state of Indiana and try to come up with solutions to how to better improve the service there. So
yeah, and all of these, for our members listening, all of these, our job in the State House and through this process is to be subject matter experts and to provide information and input onto these bills. And so legislators are generally very keen to look for that from us to see how their concepts of bills that they want to see go through the finish line and be signed into law would actually affect the operations on the ground. So we're there for information and to provide some insight and analysis of what these things are. And, that's an important piece. And I think members need to realize that that's why we're in the hallways. That's why we're in committee meetings. And that's why we're fully engaged throughout the session.
All right, and our next bill is House Bill 1118, which is Critical Incident Stress Management and Peer Support.
Yeah, so this bill was heard in the House Committee on Veterans Affairs and Public Safety this week. It was voted out as amended. We offered a suggestion through our testimony in that committee and to help make this bill a little bit better. So what this does is it provides some additional confidentiality rights, I guess, for those both in law enforcement, EMS, and fire who are participating in critical incident stress management debriefings, but also we wanted to make sure that peer support teams and the process of peer support was also added, and it applies to the confidentiality protections, I guess is a better word to say. So that was amended in to that bill as well. And in addition to that, we are monitoring House Bill 1092, which is authored by Representative Victoria Garcia Wilburn, that provides for funding for public safety training on mental health. This was a bill that she actually worked on that crafted and we supported in the last session that mandates for law enforcement and firefighters and EMS initial training for new recruits on all forms of public safety officers and firefighters, EMS, in the initial to address reduction in suicide or suicide awareness to help reduce instances of suicide among our membership and across public safety. And then also requires ongoing annual training for mental health and behavioral health awareness and suicide reduction. So this is a funding mechanism. If her bill proceeds, would provide funding for IDHS to create those educational experiences.
Our next few bills discuss funding in the state budget. Hank?
So a couple of the bills a couple priorities in the budget we're looking at is the PFAS biomonitoring. This is a continuation of the past session with Representative Bauer, who passed legislation to do PFAS testing on 1,000 firefighters. We were able to get some funding in this past biennial budget, so we're just looking to continue that program on there. Another one is looking for some funding for Indiana Task Force 1 to help assist them as an in-state asset. Currently, when they go in-state, they're currently only funded by FEMA. So looking to try to get them some funding to help as an in-state asset. And then IDHS, this past budget, for the first time, we were able to get some funding for fire training. And we're just looking to keep that going in this next budget. So those are the three top priorities that we're looking at to try to continue on in this budget.
And I would say that the Governor Braun's budget bill was just filed yesterday, and that's about a 120-page bill that we're still working through, as we are many bills. But probably over the weekend, we're going to spend some time looking at the details of the governor's proposed budget.
Our next bill is House Bill 1233, Local Government Reorganization. Yeah,
so this is a really big piece of legislation that was filed by Representative Engelman, and we are still taking a very hard look at the bill and the impact here. There's been a lot out on social media as soon as this bill was filed, and we're at a place where we're working with the representative to address some of the issues that affect our membership. And so for those of you listening, you may be familiar with this bill as it's been talked about across the socials this last week. And it has to do with elimination of township government, also the elimination of fire protection districts and fire territories that we know them, and then shifting responsibilities of the fire service. So we are very much engaged in this bill, but we're doing it within the confines of the state capitol right now. So we're meeting, like I said, with the author, and she has been open to listen to our input and would like some advice on how to make this bill better. So we are working through that, and we haven't taken approach yet forwardly or outwardly, I guess, asking for any call to action right now. We're working through the process, and this is what we do. This is why we're in the halls and why we have a presence there. So we're working through this, and we'll definitely keep members updated as this piece of legislation advances.
And it's only been filed. It's one of the 1,250 bills that have been filed.
Yeah, that's right. and at the end of the day, just kind of a piece of information that we may see 1,400 to 1,600 bills filed. There's really only about 100 bills in any given session that go through the full process and become law. So just perspective-wise, that's it's a lot of work over a relatively short period of time, but this is how the process works. As intended, maybe? Is it as intended?
As intended.
As intended, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit more about some property tax stuff? I know that.
For sure, yeah. So property taxes has been a hot button issue, it seems like, since the election ended in November. So there are at least 15 bills concerning property tax in Indiana.
That has something to do with taxing. That is correct, Eric. We are looking at right now about 4 to 5 bills, and they were just recently filed this week with regard to, and we'll categorize these as local tax reform bills. So providing, in some cases, very significant changes, in some cases, depending on the bill, with minor modifications. And we're expecting a couple more of these bills to come out as well. So we're monitoring all of these. We're going through them in great detail right now, making notes, and then working as part of a coalition statewide with other stakeholders that would be affected by local tax issue reform and how it would impact them. So, from schools, certainly local government, all forms of local government, county, city, town, township, all taxing districts, anybody that receives funds from property tax or business personal property tax. And by the way, that is how we operate our service. That is how the fire service in Indiana is funded. So we are participating in this coalition to try to build better bills. And at the end of the day, again, it's a bill may be filed. It's our job to work with the stakeholders and work with the legislators to make the bill better. So by whatever means that is, we try to make things better. But on a serious note, this is the last time really property tax reform or local government tax reform was taken up in the State House to this magnitude was back in 2014. So this is all the buzz, right? And it was a part of Governor Braun's campaign, leading up to him becoming the governor, to take a look at this. So I know that this is an important issue, and we are very much invested in this issue because it could have, depending on what happens, then the results could have
Drastic impact.
Yeah, drastic effects on our members' livelihood and ability to do their job. And that's handling emergencies in communities all across Indiana.
That's right. So, Tony, what I am hearing from you is that it is the first week. There are tons of bills being filed and nothing is finalized yet. So it's important to remember that we have just started and that things change on a day-to-day basis and that nothing is set in stone just yet.
Yeah. And this is, as we've done the last few sessions, this is the opening podcast for the opening of the legislative session. So, and part of this too is the reason we do this is to keep members who are interested informed about what's happening, but also what we're doing. And part of that is if something needs to be done from the members' perspective, like a call to action or something, and we want them to engage, we will definitely reach out to members and ask them to do that in a coordinated way.
I would encourage our members and listeners to follow us on social media. That is where you can find the most up-to-date information that is happening at the State House. Each Friday, we will be providing a recap of bills on the move and a brief overview of actions taken throughout that week.
And some weeks that will maybe be a lot of action, and in other weeks that may be very little action.
Let's move from the Indiana State House to Washington, D.C. Tony, let's talk about the 119th Congress and the WEP GPO.
So before we talk about the 119th Congress that just got underway, let's fall back to the most recent 118th Congress that just finished up before the end of the year. And most of our listeners probably are aware of the Social Security Fairness Act. That was a top priority of the IFF in this last Congress. We were victorious, and I can say at a significant win through the efforts of the IFF, the National FOP, and other partners to repeal the windfall elimination provision and GPO for Social Security. So our members who qualify for Social Security benefit for secondary jobs and things like that will realize a pretty significant increase. And I think right now they're saying the average is about $360 a month that members in public safety who qualify would see increase their monthly benefits. So right now, what I can say is that the Social Security Administration is working on this rollout, and it's to be determined when these benefits begin to be applied. But I will also say that through this victory in the work that was done by our General President, General Secretary, Treasurer, and the whole legislative team out in D.C. for the IFF, this also includes a one-time provision that covers the total amount, or so a lump sum benefits that a member would have received going back through 2024. So 2024 lump sum, to be determined when that is done, and Social Security has been directed to do this as quick as possible.
I think it's also important to mention not just our legislative team, but when we asked our members to get involved and start contacting their legislators, they came out in force.
Yeah,
and I think that had a big significant.
I think you're exactly right. And I think the number, was around 70,000. I think that's accurate. 70,000 emails that were sent to members of Congress from IFF members specifically. So that was a really heavy lift. Took twists and turns.
Down to the minute.
Down literally to the minute. Yeah. And I will say too that Governor Braun was a co-sponsor of that bill, and also as this was dragging out to the final hours of that Congress, Governor Braun made the commitment as a U.S. Senator to stay in Washington, D.C. until that business was done. So we definitely appreciate that. Should we go to 119th Congress?
Yeah, let's go.
So in the 119th Congress, which just began, the IFF has released, and I'm happy to talk about some of the key priorities that we're hoping to achieve in this next Congress and administration out in Washington, D.C. So the first thing, and it's really timely with what's going on in California and what has gone on this wildfire season across the United States. The first priority is a wildland fire and urban interface policy. This would address funding for training for structural firefighters to help be trained and educated on interface competencies when it comes to wildfires moving into urban and suburban settings. And that also includes a directive to build better building codes when it comes to helping to suppress the effects of out-of-control wildfires, particularly when they move into populous areas. The second piece is related to cancer. So the Honor Act is an act that's being considered and is a priority to add 20 specific cancers to be covered by the Public Safety Officer Death Benefit. And this is the national death benefit when members die as a result of line of duty. So the other piece of this is with related to cancer is funding for screening programs for firefighters, and also funding PFAS-free turnouts when they are available in the market, because this is going to be a big endeavor once we do get PFAS-free turnouts, is trying to outfit 355,000 of our members across the United States and Canada to get into this new gear. So there's going to be a need for some funding. And then last is the Public Safety Officers Free Speech Act, which would create some additional protections under the First Amendment when government employees speak out on issues important to them. So right now, I think I would want to remind everybody that because you're a government employee, you don't have the full protections under the First Amendment on free speech. So just be mindful of that and contact your local if you need more information about that, or the PFFUI.
Before we get out of here, we would like to say that we are excited to see everyone in Indianapolis in February for the Educational Series and the Thomas H. Miller Legislative Conference.
So we've got, a lot going on. We're going to have on February 19th is the education seminar, which is going to involve newly elected local officers, so presidents and secretary treasurers, running congruently with our advanced class on Political Training Academy. And then on the 20th, we'll welcome everybody in for the Thomas H. Miller Legislative Conference, which we're going to try something new this year. And we're going to have the morning session just across the street from the Capitol, and then wrap it up with a lunch with legislators and our attendees from all across the state interacting with the legislators over at the Capitol. So we're looking forward to that.
Lunch at the State House.
Lunch at the State House. And what else are you doing in the middle of winter, February 19th and 20th? So
Where else would you rather be?
Right.
yeah, well, I'm going to be there. And you're going to be there.
I'm going to be there.
So everybody else should be there.
We're all going to be there. So we look forward to seeing you and safe travels, and we will talk to you in February. Thank you for listening to the PFFUI podcast. Follow us on social media by searching the Professional Firefighters Union of Indiana. For more information about news and upcoming events, visit www.pffui.com. Until next time, this is PFFUI Communications Director Eric Shoaib. Stay safe.